extrapolate out for the future. Visitation in Macao. Well, in 2002, 4 million people came here, and last year 28 million came here. So it's a seven-fold increase in 10 years. You can imagine the pressure that that's put on this country's infrastructure. The feeder markets into Macao, 60% of the people that come from Macao come from China, 30% come from Hong Kong, 8% come from Taiwan, and forget the rest. Although 60% come from mainland China, as these gentlemen will attest to later on, 90% plus, might be 92, might be 96, I couldn't tell you, of the GTR comes from mainland Chinese. So that's obviously an important thing. Gross domestic revenue, most of us know the Macao story. It's gone from 7 billion in 2006 when it overtook Las Vegas, and it's just gone ballistic since then. As I said before, we're looking at 44 billion, which is bigger than the entire US gaming market, excluding Indian reservations. I'd say by 2017 we'll eclipse, including the Indian reservations as well. And by 2020 we're talking about maybe 100 billion US a year per year in Macao, which is just a staggering figure that really has got too many zeros in it for people to comprehend. If you compare that to what Las Vegas has done over the last 10 years, it's basically sat at $6 billion a year every year for 10 years. Casinos, just quickly wrapping over the casinos. In 2002 we had 11 casinos. Of course we've opened a whole bunch of casinos since then. You can see the big 9 flagship casinos I've put up there. So we've got big casinos like we're in, what we're in now, and Galaxy and so forth, that we didn't have back in 2002. Now let's start, so that's a little bit about the past. Let's start looking forward now into the future. Well, non-gaming is a big subject in Macao. Macao is definitely a casino town. It is, people come here to gamble. It's not like Vegas where they come to do something else. But if Macao ever is to become an international tourist destination, we're going to have to diversify. There's been a lot of diversification into non-gaming here in Macao that hasn't worked. Good example, like when Wynn opened up, they opened up Trist nightclub here, and they obviously Trist nightclub they had in Wynn in Vegas was very popular, didn't work here. The Sands tried Playboy Club here, didn't work. Zaya, that used to be here, they had it for a couple of years, it basically didn't work. That's what I like to call almost fake non-gaming. A lot of casinos try and create non-gaming amenities and offerings, and they haven't worked because they're just doing it to appease the government rather than there being real demand. But there will be real demand as the main people from mainland China become more sophisticated. You look at the great example I like to use is red wine. 10 years ago, there was hardly any red wine consumption in mainland China at all. Today, it's the biggest consumer in the world. I think it's just become mainland China. So mainland China, as they grow and become more sophisticated, will have demand for non-gaming. Aaron, you at Campeg, would you like to have a discussion, a little bit of a chat about non-gaming in Macao?
Thank you for that intro segue. I'd just like to say that the biggest opportunity that I see going forward in regards to visibility and mainland China lies in the huge penetration rate opportunity. Right now, we're looking at, as a percentage of the overall adult male population of China who can actually come over here, less than 4%. Now you've heard for less than 1, but actually from my numbers it comes out to roughly around 4% penetration from mainland China, as opposed to what we see in Las Vegas or more developed markets in Western Europe. Well, we'll probably see maybe 30+% in terms of annual penetration of people going over to those gaming markets there, specifically Las Vegas. So when I look at the opportunity for Macao, I think about the greater picture on how most people that I talk to in China still haven't been here. So yesterday there was Grant Goverson says something very, I thought very influential, was that people find Macao very aspirational, and I believe that's the most important thing. Most people want to come to Macao very badly because of the, I guess, country branding, if you will. Macao Inc. is now such a powerful, powerfully recognized kind of brand in China. It's something that they really aspire to go and visit. And so there's so many people in China that haven't been to Macao yet. I mean, if you do any study, or real kind of unscientific study, and go to China and talk to people, no one's been to Macao yet. And so the point is that as we build a larger critical mass of middle-class folks, that opportunity is going to arise. And the first place to go for their check-off list is going to be Macao. So I'm very excited about not necessarily just the casino aspect, the gaming aspect of it, but just the overall consumer discretionary income opportunity for Macao. It's absolutely huge.
There we go. There we go. Some more about, a little bit about non-gaming things that will build up Macao. We're starting to do more and more events here in Macao. So obviously the 60th Grand Prix is on at the moment. That's an event that's been around for ages. But we're getting big time boxing coming to Macao. We've got Manny Pacquiao later this month. We've got MMA coming for the first time here. So we're trying to build Macao Inc., as Aaron mentioned, as a brand that people aspire to come to for various different reasons. And these kind of events that we're starting to hold now in Macao will put us in a position where we rival Las Vegas and make it exactly that, aspirational. Resident shows, just a little bit about resident shows. So Vegas has dozens of them. We only have one here in Macao, the House of Dancing Water. I believe that over time will change. A little bit about MICE. MICE is working in Macao. It's starting to work. It had a long leading time, it struggled early on, but this year, or last year, these are the figures for, we've averaged 2,600 visitors per event for 519 events. That is not bad, and it'll be higher this year. Now, Macao, of course, has two hubs. When you think about the future of Macao, it has the peninsula over there, and it has Cotai over here. The peninsula, the biggest issue with the peninsula, of course, is space. There's no space there at all. So you've got the older, smaller casinos that don't have any room to do anything other than offer the gaming that they already offer. But in Cotai, we've got all these new integrated resorts. We're looking at people who take longer stays and more non-gaming. Believe it or not, that trip over the bridge is a big deal for people when they come to Macao. The average stay in Macao is 1.5 days. And by the time you might get stuck at the border gate for an hour or two coming in, and the same thing on the way going out, and you maybe you sleep here, maybe you don't. That extra sort of 20 or 30 minutes you lose each way, over and back, makes a big difference for a day tripper. So most of the day trippers don't even bother to get over the bridge. A couple of nice pictures. Galaxy Macao and Venetian. Right, let's talk about the Cotai of the future. Each of the 6 concessionaires that have licenses in Macao are building one new great big property. Galaxy's is phase 2, which will connect seamlessly to phase 1, so you'll just have a bigger Galaxy. But SCL are building Parisian, MGM are building their own property, so's Wynn, Melco Crown's got Macao Studio City, and SJM's building a property too. We've also got this Louis XIII property at the south end of the Strip, and that essentially fills up Cotai, all those properties. So I've got a nice little map here for you. So you've got the airport over there on the east, the 3 bridges up the top coming over from Macao, and Cotai in the middle. I'm going to zoom in on that now. So Cotai right now looks quite empty when you drive around, doesn't it? Lots of parcels of land with nothing there. But it will basically, when each of those 6 are built, which will be done and dusted by about 2018, 2019, the whole place will be full. The only empty bits will be parcels 7 and 8 south of SCC, and there's kind of a bit of swampy land south of Galaxy, which I don't even know if they can build on. So these are the issues that people always bring up about Macao. Whenever analysts need to find a thing to talk Macao down, they pick one of these 6. Right, the central government turning off the tap and stopping the visas and stopping their customers coming here. What's going to happen about the licenses? Oh, you've got this terrible table cap here which is going to stop your growth. You don't have enough people, that's true. You don't have enough hotel rooms, that's true. And we do have some infrastructure deficiencies. So I'm just going to quickly run through them one by one, because I want to leave enough time for us to have a discussion to throw up to some questions. There is an individual visa scheme for Macao and for Hong Kong. If you're from one of 49 cities in mainland China, you can come here not in a tour group. If you're not from one of those cities, you can get yourself into a tour group dead easy at the border. Right? All you have to do is pay a little bit of money and somebody will organise you into a tour group. The tour takes you from one side of the border to the other, and then you're on your own. So it's not really a problem for people coming to Macao. The one country, two systems thing is a big deal for the central government. They need it to be successful, and it has been successful. It's worked well for the last 10 years. Remember when the Hong Kong handover happened, and beforehand everybody was scared and running off to Canada and all this sort of stuff? Well, it worked absolutely fine. And the central government wants it to work fine and be a shining example to Taiwan if they ever wanted to join the fold. You come back again, that could be another Hong Kong or another Macao. So people bring this up, the scaremongers bring this up all the time, but I don't think it's really a huge problem. This is an interesting one. What is going to happen with the licenses when they come up for renewal in 2020 and 2022? Answer right now, nobody really knows. I'm sure we worked out in a very Chinese way at the time. Would there be an opportunity for new players like Genting and Caesars to come in? Who knows? Third one is the table cap. So we had this table cap imposed on us in 2012, 5,500 tables. It was meant to increase by 3% every year for 10 years, but it actually went up by more than 3% the first year. The first year was last year, so any math whizzes amongst you can do 3% of 5,500 is 165, but they actually approved 250 tables. They said their hand was forced with prior commitments and they'll average 3% over the next 10 years. But it just doesn't add up. We've got 6 new hotel properties. Many have announced that they're going to have more than 400 tables. For a big integrated resort, it works out that you need about 400 tables to make it viable. So most of them announced that they're going to have 500, 600, that's a good number to say. But you need 400, and 400 times 6 is 2,400, it just doesn't add up. So what's going to happen? Well, I interviewed Francis Loy earlier this year, the Vice Chairman of Galaxy, and he confirmed that we need that kind of number, 2,400. You can see what he said. So he raised the issue. And we've also got, Louis XIII, obviously some property probably go on parcels 7 and 8 at some point. So we just don't have enough tables within that table cap. How will it be resolved? And again, I asked Francis what his opinion on that was. And if you read through all that and decode it, it basically comes up and says, well, we're going to go to the government and talk to them about it and try and fix this problem. Of course, this has been a fantastic opportunity for Aaron's company because the lack of tables has meant that the live dealer product has really thrived, which has been fantastic for you guys, and it's been good for Macao. It's created a solution for this lack of supply issue. Don't know what that slide is doing. Okay. Labour shortage is the other big issue. We don't have enough people here to work, and the government makes it quite difficult for people to come here from overseas. They have quietly been issuing more and more blue cards as time goes on. So their unemployment rate's been sitting at 2% for a long time. It's actually down about 1.8% at the moment. And the last problem with this list is we don't have enough hotel rooms. So we have about 27,000 hotel rooms at the moment. The 28,000 I think it's up to now. But every night in Macao, on average, we have 56,000 people in this town looking for a hotel room for the night. Right, here's something about the future of Macao, the future of the Asian game industry. Hengqin Island. It's a great big massive island, you've probably heard of it, 3 times the size of Macao, directly to the west of Macao. And they're going to bring Chimlong Ocean Resort to Hengqin. Chimlong is kind of like a Disneyland for Chinese in kind of a way, but they're also building a lot of things there. They're going to build capacity there, 20,000 more hotel rooms over the next 10 years or so. So that's going to be one answer to our hotel room problem. Infrastructure problems. We desperately need more infrastructure here. We've grown tenfold in the last 10 years, so we need some more infrastructure. Well, obviously we've got the Macau, Zhuhai, Hong Kong bridge being built at the moment, 50-kilometre bridge from Hong Kong, and that's going to be able to bring people over and take pressure off the ferry terminals. We've got the Macau Light Rail being built at the moment, and we've got massive expansion of the water gate so that people won't have that 1 hour or 2 hour wait during busy times to get into Macau. There's a little about the bridge, opens in 2016. The Macau Light Rail opens in 2015 with inverted commas around it because I don't think it will open in 2015. Probably looking at 16. And the border gate expansion, that's a very large expansion you can see there in border gate capacity. So 2016 seems to be our magic year. 2016 seems to be the year that all this capacity will come online. My future expectations, well, I think it'll be more of the same. I think it'll just keep on growing. All these issues that have been brought up pale into insignificance compared to the pent-up demand there is. And exactly what Aaron was saying, your figures work out at 4%. Some other people have worked out 1%. So that even if it is 4%, 96% of the people that live in China have never been to Macau. And yet we have this enormous turnover here, we have this enormous growth, and yet 96% of the people in our main feeder market have never even been here once yet. So imagine once we start getting some of them, and they get enough money to come here, what it's going to be like. I think everybody in this room knows that China is going to be the next global superpower. It's China's century in the 21st century. Everyone seems to get a century before the next superpower comes along. China's growth is looking at 7 or 8% year in, year out. And again, in that interview what I did with Francis recently, he said, we're just getting warmed up. So anybody who thinks, these analysts who say, oh, Macao, how long can this keep on going for? It really, really hasn't even started yet. Concomitant with that growth will be a massive growth of the Chinese middle class. People say there's 1.3 billion people in China, but there's only about 100 million of them with any money. Well, yeah, there is only about 150 million of them with any money now, and that's half the population of the US, by the way. But within not very long, it's predicted that in a mere 17 years from now, 1 billion of them will have the kind of money that it takes to come and do regular trips to Macau. Let's just talk a little bit about the rest of Asia. I'm going to bring in Sean here on a bit of this, because Sean spent a bit of time in a lot of these places. Every time a new market opens up somewhere else in Asia, everybody says, oh, this will be bad for Macau, this is a massive threat to Macau. It never is. It's never a problem. Singapore opened. I remember before Singapore opening, people writing, this could be a really big problem for Macau. And the analogy I like to use in relation to this is when the VCR came along. I'm just old enough to remember the VCR coming out, video cassette recorder, and people saying this is going to be the end of movies. There'll be no cinema anymore. Didn't happen, did it? What actually happened was it kicked in a resurgence of the movie industry. People were interested in movies again. People were starting to get movies and taking them home, and because they started liking movies again and getting interested in it, they went to the movies. I think the same thing happens in gaming. I think you open a casino in Laos, for example, where Sean is, you're going to get people who've never been to Macau but have easy access to that casino in Laos, going and playing, enjoying it, and then wanting to go to the big time, Macau. So you see this in Las Vegas all the time. People in local little casino, they play, they get interested in playing, they want to go to Vegas because that's where the big place is. So I don't think it's a threat at all. Look, Singapore, almost instantly when the lights were turned on, became a $6 billion a year market, the same size as Vegas, which is incredible when you think there's only 2 casinos there. Vegas has got an 80 or whatever it's got. There was zero cannibalisation. So a whole new pie was growing out of nowhere. The Philippines, it's a $2 billion market, and we had a Resorts World Manila open a few years ago, and now we've got Entertainment City with the new four casinos, one which opened last year, Soler, and we've got City of Dreams Manila opening up next year, and 2 more on the way. How big that will get, we'll see when it opens. We've got Korea as a $2 billion market as well. Korea's unique thing, as I mentioned before, is no locals, apart from in Kangwon Land, which does about half of the turnover, and it's a 4-hour difficult drive from Seoul. So you can imagine if they opened up casinos like Walker Hill or Seven Luck or those casinos in Seoul, what action those casinos would suddenly do. Emerging markets. A lot of the markets in Southeast Asia feed off Thailand. No legal casinos in Thailand. So you've got places like Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. We're going to have a bit of a discussion in a moment. Sean, I thought it would be sketchy to come in right now and tell us a little bit about the markets that feed off Thailand.
Well, the Thai market is just a fabulous market, and it doesn't even feature here in Macau. It's just not even a market that's active. So some of these markets that are around Asia, and I was just picking up on what Aaron was saying before. These additional markets that are out there, the aspiration is to get to Macau, no question about that. And any of the additional resorts as they grow in other countries will just themselves, I think, become feeder markets into what we have here. We are, what are we in 10 years here? And it's nothing. It's just an absolute, it's just a baby at the moment. And I'm with you. We talk to analysts. The very first question an analyst always asks, when's the growth going to start? When's it going to stop? And we say, well, it's only started, it's only going to start. So these new markets, these emerging markets, as you say, like Laos and Cambodia, Cambodia's certainly not an emerging market, it's been going for a long time. I can still remember 15 years ago, going across into Port Pet, it was like going into another world. They still had ox and carts going up and down the street. And you know, when they were still 5 deep on the blackjack tables, not the baccarat tables. So things definitely move very quickly once things get started.
So if I'm a rich guy in Bangkok and I suddenly feel like playing blackjack for a few hours, or playing baccarat for a few hours, where do I go?
Well, of course, you can go to one of the local ones, which are underground.
If I want to play somewhere legal, where do I go?
I don't know if any of you have been to one of these local ones underground, but it's quite an experience. I got handheld and walked through about 15 alleyways and finally came into this massive car park, which was guarded by local police. Then went straight upstairs into a casino which had hand-drawn layouts. So, you know, really from Thailand, they look at Australia. Australia's a very good market. Crown have done a good job in developing the Thai market. And of course, you know, the borders with Thailand when they go into Cambodia, you know, it's a huge market for them down there. I mean, what is it, 4-hour drive, I think, from Bangkok. And there's plenty of traffic, and they've made it very easy on the borders to get across.
So Port Pet would be the biggest?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a huge. And it has been for years. Yeah, it has been for years.
For those of you that don't know about Port Pet, there's 9 casinos and 1 electronic gaming club wedged between the borders of when you leave Thailand but before you enter Cambodia. So in that little gap there, there's and some of them are huge. I visited earlier this year, and one of them has over 1,000 slot machines. I mean, each of them probably has 300 or 400 hotel rooms with decent property.
Very decent, and you know, really 5 deep on the tables. You know, to get a bet. You know, it's not easy. I think the minimum bet's $100. So you know, it's significant. It's significant revenue.
Okay, why is it not moving? Look. Wind City, you want to rescue me? Hello? Can you figure out the next one? Right. Taiwan. People talk about Taiwan a lot. There was a referendum in 2009 to get casino gaming in Penghu Island. It did not pass, but last year there was a referendum that passed for the Matsu group of islands. Now, these islands are right next to mainland China. They're administered by Taiwan, but if you look at a map and here's China and here's Taiwan, these islands are right here. In fact, only about 10 kilometres from the Chinese coast. And Fujian province is I think it's always within visible distance on a clear day. And Fuzhou being the main city, that would be a big feeder market for Matsu. So there is a bit of frustration with the process is slow. The referendum is passed, but the legislation is not across the line yet. But the referendum is passed. I don't know why that's not working. Can you flick it to the next one? Japan potentially is a huge market. Maybe 10 billion is sort of the number that people are kicking around. So that makes it bigger than Singapore, bigger than Las Vegas. Would instantly become number 2 in the world. There's been lobbying for about 10 years to try and get casinos in Japan. It looks like it's finally starting to work. The bill might be passed in the first quarter of 2014. The information that I'm being told is it will, but I don't believe anybody really knows whether it will or not, since the legislators themselves don't know. But if it is, the plan would be to have casinos ready and open in 2019, ready for the Olympics. They don't even know where they would be yet. The talk is that there would be 2 big integrated resorts, one in Tokyo and one in Osaka, and maybe up to 2, 3, 5 different smaller casinos in different cities. There's more than 10 cities in Japan lobbying at the moment, trying to be one of those 2 to 5 cities. Korea, as I said, would be a much bigger market than the 2 billion it is if the locals were allowed to play. Could be possibly as big as maybe Singapore, 6 billion. And now we're going to have a bit of a discussion. But just to wrap up on that, if you think about it, if Korea went to maybe 6 billion and Japan went to 10 billion, well there's 16, a couple for the Philippines and a couple for somewhere else, I don't know, 20 odd, and about 45-ish for here, all of a sudden you're up to 60 or 70 billion. and I don't believe there would be any cannibalisation at all. I reckon their pie is sitting there waiting to go into the oven and be baked. There's not going to be pieces of the pie taken away from Macao. I think the experience of what happened when we opened Singapore would just be repeated in Japan or something like that. So that's, I've got up there question time, but first I'd like to have a bit of discussion now. I've been through the slides. Maybe back to you, Aaron. What's your view, what's your thinking about the next 5 to 10 years for Macao?
Well, we've definitely come a long way for the last 10 years in terms of gross gaming revenue numbers. When I kind of looked at the space back in 2003, we were talking about gross gaming revenues about 1.3 billion US dollars, and now about 44 billion maybe this year, give or take, maybe -1, +1. And the point is that this whole exercise from 1 to 44, if you will, has been about no China to all of China, essentially, in terms of not allowing the Chinese people to come before, and now the only game in town is the mainland Chinese folks. So the way to look at Macao as a proxy is to look at it as a proxy to mainland China. The correlation rate is pretty tight. Not to luxury sales or goods or necessary wine purchases or whatnot. At the end of the day, the way to look at Macao is just to look at the greater consumption story with the rest of China. So at the end of the day, the penetration rate is so damn low. So we have nowhere else to go but up. Everyone gets, the folks, we're talking about people who are visiting here and also at the same time the casino gaming revenue numbers. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is about how we're going to be continuing to attract more people here. Penetration rate is so low. So at the end of the day, it's just really about how quickly the critical mass forms with regards to China middle class, whatever that means.
Just a bit of a follow-up on that. I noticed the visitation numbers, they're increasing, but they're certainly not increasing at the rate as the GGR is increasing. So the implication of that is that people are betting more. They're bringing more money with them, and their average bet is higher. Now, there's no doubt that the minimums have been going up around town. Have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, you know, you gotta remember, this is gambling. It's not a game, it's gambling. Gambling is, you know, it's problematic. And so you don't find a problematic gambler, you make a problematic gambler. So once you come to Macao, you fall in a vicious cycle. Everyone's different in terms of how they fall into this vicious cycle. But nonetheless, whether you're mass category or VIP category or junket VIP or direct VIP or mass grind, you're still a problematic gambler. So behind the smoke veil, we don't need to kind of look at it as I say, this is entertainment, leisure, gaming. It's problematic gambling. So the way I look at it is that how quickly somebody can fall in a vicious cycle. And so we capture a lot of people in the short term, and you work them through the life cycle and you spit them out. So that's essentially what it is. Some people last longer, some people last less. But at the end of the day, that's why the gaming revenues are coming in higher, even though the participation rate of people that might be coming into Macao penetration-wise is still not keeping on the same speed. My point is that we're able to, through much savvier methodologies of marketing that, you know, the international operators have brought in terms of their best practice, are able to squeeze more out of every individual that is on these different tiers and brackets.
Thanks for putting it so simply and gently. Sean, let's talk about the rest of Asia. Let's talk about the rest of Asia. Not that you haven't spent a lot of time in Macau, but you've also spent a lot of time around the rest of Asia. Japan, for example, what's your view? We're all guessing on how big Japan would be. What do you think?
I don't get it with Japan. I have to say, I don't know where they get this $10 billion price tag. I just don't see it. How many Japanese players? I mean, I've been in operations for many years. I've come across very, very little Japanese play, I have to say. I've seen VIP play, and yeah, they've been good players, but I can count them on one hand. So I can't see this market, all this sex drive. I can't see Japan as being very sexy, for me, personally.
It's interesting you say that, because that was my exact same initial reaction. When I started hearing about Japan this and Japan that, I go, Japanese, that ain't gamble. Like, you mean you see them in casinos?
I guarantee this comes from those analysts that we now have to deal with. You know, the industry goes, and I'm sorry if there's any analysts in the room, but you know, when we, as a casino business, we went through the accountant phase. You know, the accountants would come in and they would run the properties. Accountants think completely different to a gaming operator. They don't dream the same, they don't have the same goals. And now we're moving into the analyst phase where we're now seeing analysts making a lot of decisions in the industry. And I can only imagine that this figure of 10 billion has come from an analytical background, because in reality, I just can't see it.
Well, how it was explained to me, now I don't necessarily say that I agree with this, but the rebuttal to me when I said exactly what you said to me was that Japan is a very monocultural society. Japanese are spoken in Japan and Japan only and nowhere else. The Japanese are very different to the rest of Asia, very different to the rest of the world. And they don't necessarily like to get out of their comfort zone. They don't necessarily like to travel so much. And there's obviously the whole pachinko element as well. There's a lot of action going through pachinko. So there are a lot of people, this is what was told to me, I'm interested in your comments on it, and yours too, Aaron, is that there are a lot of people that currently don't travel to be VIPs at Crown Casino in Melbourne or the Venetian Macao or Galaxy Macao or wherever. But if there is a casino on their own doorstep with Japanese managers and Japanese dealers and it's all set up for their culture, they'll go and play, whereas perhaps before they were gambling on some other form of gambling. That was what was told.
I guess there's some element to that. I mean, no question.
But maybe not 10 billion worth.
Well, I can't see $10 billion people used to winning teddy bears. You know, but you know, and then there's the female element. You know, it's male culture in Japan, and you know, in our business, you know, the female, you know, punter contributes almost as much as the males do, and definitely on the mass market, they're probably more than the male players. And you know, we encourage them, and you know, we've got programs that you know that recognise that. So. Can you see that happening in Japan?
Aaron, your comment, then we'll throw up to it some questions.
I humbly, politely, a little bit disagree. I think Japan, you know, they have not necessarily been going a little bit further out to gamble. They might be just going a few kilometers down to the local Yakuza place to go and gamble in the local neighborhood, Tokyo area, if you will, or another area, Kobe or Osaka. But I've been to those establishments and they're quite vibrant. They've got about 5 to 10 tables maximum in about a 3 to say 10,000 square foot location, site in a building or in the basement. But I would say that the way I look at the Japan market is really about the underground gambling that goes on for table games and how they can bring it up to the surface. The Japanese equivalent of the FBI have done some studies in the late 90s about the black market for table games, and it's quite extraordinarily high from what I've read. It's a police or pseudo police extensive report, but it's about at least 50 billion they're talking about U.S.
Would you see the market primarily internally?
It's a domestic market. I don't think Chinese people are going to go to Japan anytime soon.
I don't think so.
No,
I agree 100%. It's going to be one of the most domestic markets in the world.
Absolutely. So when I look at the opportunity for Japan, I kind of look at it of how a lot of the Yakuza will be, destroyed, and how they, will bring that business to the surface, and so how much of that can be captured in the surface. So honestly, I mean, frankly, I'm thinking the market is kind of huge, just because there might be a greater penetration rate there. We're not going to see necessarily that 23 billion pachinko market move over to the slots, right? Pachinko is pachinko, pachi slot is pachi slot. But at the end of the day, when you can go and entice the same group of Japanese gamblers who like to play roulette and baccarat and other card games like blackjack, bring them to the surface by enticing them with pretty more girls and a much better red carpet treatment. Absolutely, I think because
it's a good point and a very valid one. I also think with my dealings with underground games, credit plays a huge part of that. And Macao's successful in it is because the operators don't have to get involved in credit situations. That's all done by the junket operators. So we have a very, very unique situation in our operations in Macao, where the casino operators don't actually know who the players are. They're not their players. Whereas in other casino locations, it's the first thing you know as well. You're winning so many millions on the table. Where does it come from? Who's the player? There's a relationship. So I just wonder, with the underground market as it is, where it's really all done on credit, you don't see any cash really changing hands. is that also might come into the mix, you know, when the time comes.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's pretty fair, right? That's going to be a huge filter in terms of what the real penetration rate is. It's not all of it is going to be brought to surface.
And the collection rate.
And right, absolutely. But I think that more my point was the affinity towards gambling for the Japanese is still very high for table games, and I don't think that that will necessarily dissipate. They obviously have much different demographics with the rest of Asia Pacific, but the way I see it is that there is a lot of opportunity for some of that filtering of the underground to bring to the surface, and at the same time be able to capture new players who have never had a real substitute for Pachislav and Pachinko.
I should just share a story. This is a true story. When we opened Burswood in the early 80s, we had some 3 large Japanese players come, and the one main player sat on the table on Baccarat, and he had a huge winning streak. He picked up about $50,000, which is quite a lot, you know, back in the 80s. It was a lot for us because, you know, we weren't used to dealing with Japanese customers. And the 2 guys that were sat either side, it's quite obvious they were his bodyguards, you know, in the end. But anyway, the player decided to go to sleep, go to his hotel room, and he obviously instructed his 2 security people to mind his money. Anyway, he only walked out the floor about 2 minutes, and they started betting. They started betting his money, and within 5 minutes they'd lost it all. They didn't realise that one of our staff spoke fluent Japanese, and the discussion then went on to, well, we've lost his money, now what are we going to do? You know, he's a bad guy. Right, but will the Australian hospitals understand that when we cut our fingers here, that they will be able to fix it, and they will understand, you know, why we've done it. So the whole conversation was around how they were going to explain to the Australian medical department, the emergency medical department, how they'd actually lost the end of their fingers. So then they got up and walked away, and we actually didn't see them again. So I don't know.
Maybe they lost more than they
I don't know how the story ended, you know, but yeah, it's funny.
We better leave it some time for some questions. So any questions from someone? Come on, don't be shy. Grimy, you're always good for a question.
Sure. I think I can. Are you going to give me a microphone? Hi, Aaron. I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying about churning through the players. There's the, as it were, the industry perception and then the public perception. Because as you know, the public perception is that, you know, it's a bad industry. And if you speak about players in this way, people are going to perceive that the industry really doesn't regard them with respect. What would you say to that?
I think the educated person understands that it's not gaming, it's gambling. So I want to go and talk to somebody on an adult level. It's gambling. So we can talk about entertainment and leisure to sugarcoat it as much as we want about this whole exercise in Macao, but we don't have enough of this whole non-gaming right now. But it's improving dramatically, right? But at the end of the day, it's about gambling. And so the point is there's no real multiplier effect in terms of reinvestment into the economy necessarily, right? You know, so we have to kind of think about the bigger, broader picture. So when I'm coming to Macau to go and potentially get on a lucky streak, right? Because there's aspirations not only just to come to Macau, but to go on the casino floor and we want to make some money. I'm not trying to give money to the casino. I'm trying to make money competitively. So talking from an adult level, we are talking about trying to compete with the casinos to go and make money. And so sometimes, or most of the times, the emotional side is the one that takes greater toll on us. And so we do go into a greater kind of form of despair where we just can't control ourselves. And that's what is happening to a lot of people. But, you know, we can make the argument is that most or some. But at the end of the day, it is something that I believe is key to driving this industry, is that getting people back. And so it is what it is. I don't want to go and sugarcoat it. We're all adults here. We're talking about something that's really important about the future of Macau and gaming Asia Pacific. But at the end of the day, it's gambling.
Sure, thank you.
I think you got your answer, Michael. Any questions for yes on the back there? Just wait till your microphone.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for the talk. There was a slide earlier where you mentioned, where the speaker mentioned that there were a bunch of risks for Macau in the short term. During this conference, I think everyone's been pretty bullish on the gaming industry here, but Aaron, if you could kind of speak in terms of, which one of those risks do you see as a really big hindrance in terms of going forward?
Absolutely. So, the most important thing that might keep me up at night if I were to kind of have too much of my money, invested with all these Macau casino stocks would lie with regards to just where the net wealth effect is happening in China. We all know there's a pretty true fact that high correlation has to do with real estate. Before the GFC, the global financial crisis, China was pretty much left, unscathed due to the fact that property prices were pretty reasonable. But I think for the most part, people here understand that that's just not the case. We're in an area of uncharted territory where property prices are going, whether you want to call it a bubble or not. I believe it's up to you to call, but it's ridiculously high and it has to go and trend back down. So if net wealth effect were to be hit hard, like I believe it would in the short term, just makes sense. It has to recalibrate from a lower base. Then Macau will be destroyed in the short term, right? Because net wealth effect destruction means that people feel less rich, means that higher correlation with most mainland Chinese people gambling, 80 plus 90%. Yeah, in the short term, that will go and bring the numbers down. And then we can all argue when we're going to come back up again. It's going to be V-shaped like it was GFC, or it's going to be more of an L-shape going forward in the future. But absolutely, this greater Macau story, it is a virtuous, longer-term secular growth trend going up over the next 10, 15 years, but it's not going to be without its speed bumps. And something I think about would be like, renminbi depreciation, or people, due to that fact, will go and try to start taking money out of China. Of course, China is not going to like that, especially because the rich people are going to be the ones taking the most amount of money out. And then you got to stop that. When you do it, you use archaic methods to do that. You start Union Pay, you try to stop money wiring. God forbid if Union Pay will be stopped over here. Premium mass. And then, and that's just mass. We're not even talking about VIP gambling. We're not talking about direct or the agentic side. That would cause a huge vicious cycle in terms of utilization of future capital, credit payback cycle days, and so forth and so on. Forward and just, if I were a VIP and I knew that I didn't have clarity on how much money I can make the following month in terms of my cash flow, I want to come back to Macau. That means I wouldn't pay my previous debts here. That's exactly what happened in the GFC. So I'm just saying that we just got to be realistic in terms of our growth trend here. It's not going to be about some speed bumps, but in terms of longer-term secular growth story, it's totally intact, especially when we're talking about revenue liberalization in the future, right? That means that the margins will be much more enhanced, as well as frequency of visits in the future. Of course, IBS scheme will go down to, okay, Chinese people decide for themselves if they want to come to Macau or not.
Just like to add to what Aaron said there, I remember very well being here in 2008, we need to call it now, 2009, still 2008, 2009, and it was all gloom and doom and woe was me during the GFC. And again, exactly as Aaron said, there will only be speed bumps. There will be no downs in Macau. There will be only, if you look at Macau over a long-term graph with a nice wide x-axis over a long period of time, there will only be up for a long, long, long time to come. There will occasionally be someone come along and punch the line, and the line will have a big great big dent in it. But it'll catch up the next year. Look exactly what happened in GFC. That year, the average year-on-year growth in Macau for the last 6 years has been 30%. 30% year-on-year. But it hasn't been 30% every year. There was that one year, I think it was 9, it was single digits, but the next year it was like 45 or something like that. So, I think Macau, Aaron gave you the only answer he could give you, which was the only negatives you could find, but they're only going to be short-term negatives. There's really going to be no long-term negatives for a long, long time to come.
And don't forget there's the unreported revenues.
Well, I didn't even bring that up. All the money that doesn't...
20 times? I mean, this is joke.
Well, if you wanted to start bringing up that subject, then Macau, that 100 billion, try making that 250 billion.
So based off that, when does Macau become like Las Vegas, stagnating? With this GGR basically stagnating?
Just grab a microphone.
So Michael, you said when does Macau become like Las Vegas in terms of whole?
In terms of its GGR basically stagnating around its current level.
Oh, you mean with regards to as moving the needle in terms of percentage of non-gaming game?
You mean when does this growth phase end and it flatten out?
Sure, yes.
2060, 2070? I'm not joking.
We'll be long dead.
We'll be dead. We'll be dead.
But that is the question that all analysts ask. When is it going to stop? But it's not going to stop. It's only just starting.
You think about what Aaron said. 96%, the figures I've said are more like 99. You can argue whether it's 96 or 99. 90-something high 90% of people have never even been to Macau. Not even visited for their first time yet. And as that middle class rises from 150 million to 300 million to 500 million to 700 million to $1 billion, which is going to do over the next 15 years, they're all going to be wanting to come to Macau. We're going to have enough capacity here for 10 Macaos, 10 of today's Macaos. So you really, as Francis always said, we're just getting warmed up. And when analysts and people hear people like us say this, they think, oh, you're just being overly bullish because you're invested in it. It's not. It's what was based upon the evidence that we've seen.
And no exaggeration, so when I ask people in China, how come you don't come to Macau? He's like, hey man, dude, I'm poor. I can't afford to go to the next city. You ask me why don't I come to Macau? So at the end of the day, most people can't afford to go to Macau yet. But that will change. People get richer. Chinese people stop smoking soon. People come to Macau. At the end of the day, Macau is the only game in town. And there's nothing else in terms of critical mass or any substitute.
Now you think about a hotel room in Macau at the moment on a weekend is like $2,200. That's a lot of money if you're from mainland China. That's a lot of money if you're not from mainland China. That's $300 US. That's a lot for a hotel room. And it's because our hotel room stock is so low. But once we get 20,000 rooms over in Hengqin, once we increase the Macau stock of hotel rooms from 28,000 to 40,000, we might get it down from $2,400 to $1,500. That's going to make a massive difference for your guy who can save up for his one trip a year to Macau. So, it's going to make a huge difference. Anybody else? All right? We're good?
There's no other questions, then the discussion will end here. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, Mr. McCallum, and Mr. Doctor, for sharing. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Robert Stocker, the Member Engagement